speaker for tonight, Brother Randy Feria.
Good evening, brothers and sisters. The talk that I'd like to give to you is about financial stewardship. Um, so it's Christian financial stewardship. And you'll note one of the pictures, well, there are several pictures that I placed up front. No? The one on top says, stewards, faithful in both the big and the little things. And then you're familiar with yung coin. Nakasulat doon, in God we trust, di ba? So even in money itself, it says we trust in the Lord. Meron ba kayong ano diyan? Bill? Do you have a bill? Tingin kayo ng kahit anong bill. Hindi, kahit pesos. May nakasulat diyan eh. I think it's in the 1,000 bill eh, but I'm not sure if it's here. Oh, so dito, sa 5, yan. Ano yung nakasulat? Oh, sabihin mo nga.
Pinagpala ang bayan na ang Diyos ay ang Panginoon.
Alam niyo ba yon? Tingnan niyo yung 50 pesos. Pinagpala ang bayan na ang Diyos ay Panginoon. And then here in the 500 pesos, it says, faith in our people and faith in God. Even in money, no, it speaks about trusting in the Lord and faith in the Lord. And then behind there, I'm gonna show that picture again later. Are you familiar with those 3 T's? Time, talent, and treasure. That's what we have, no? We have time, we have our talent, and we have our treasure. And I'm gonna speak about that in a while. But what I'd like to do this evening, medyo hoarse ba yung voice ko? Kasi siguro inaantok na rin ako eh. Ako yung inaantok. So hopefully magising-gising ako habang nagbibigay ng talk. I'd like to talk about 4 things. Stewardship, principles of financial stewardship, the practice of Christian financial giving, and practical application in lingkod ng Panginoon. Sabi kanina, I'm with ligaya ng Panginoon, but I also came from lingkod ng Panginoon, and it's in lingkod where I learned a lot of things. And this is one particular thing that I also learned through lingkod, perfected over the years probably. Christian financial stewardship. And of course, if we want to talk about Christian financial stewardship, we will begin with stewardship. Right? So, let's begin with stewardship. Ano ba yung stewardship? Does any one of you know what stewardship is? Any idea? Ano yung root word? What's the root word of stewardship? Steward. Oh, hiniwalay ko na dyan para mahulaan nyo na. So, the root word is steward. And it comes from a Greek word, oikonomos. So yung Greek word niya is oikonomos. And that Greek word has 2 words in it, has 2 elements in it. Oikos, meaning a house, and nemo, meaning to arrange. This is not the friend of Dory, yung isda, no? So, oikos and nemo. Pag pinaghalo mo, oikonomos. So, if you look at the English translations, it means to arrange a house. So, yun yung steward. No? So, it's the manager of a house. Or another word for it is a guardian. And the picture I showed here is a hotel manager. Bakit kaya hotel man? Putol pala yung screen ko, no? Okay, anyway. A hotel manager. Bakit kaya? If you go to a hotel, how many of you have gone in a hotel? Hindi naman kailangan nagstay sa loob, pero nakapasok na ng hotel. Alright, and a lot of hotels have hotel managers, di ba? Dapat lahat nga may hotel manager. And when you meet the hotel manager, pagkausap kayo, parang siya yung may-ari. Di ba? He's the one managing everything. Minamandohan niya lahat. Sinasabi niya what needs to be done, what's important. But I have a question. Is the hotel manager the owner of the hotel? No, no. He's the manager of the hotel. He's the steward of the hotel. Siya yung tagapangalaga ng hotel, but he does not really own the hotel. And that's the principle of a steward. When you're a steward, it doesn't necessarily mean that you own what you are caring for. Someone else owns it, but that someone else has entrusted it to you. And therefore, you're the steward. Let's do a quick Bible study. How many of you know the story of Joseph? Joseph? Can you raise your hands? Okay. Joseph is ang isang, because there was a famous play before about the rainbow robe. Siya yung binigyan ng tatay niya ng rainbow-colored robe, di ba? And if you remember Joseph, the story of Joseph, Joseph went through so many adversities. Batang-bata pa lang, inaasar na siya ng mga kuya niya, tapos inggit na inggit yung mga kuya niya sa kanya kasi binigyan siya ng magandang robe. Ibig sabihin nun, may pagka-favorite yung daddy niya sa kanya. In fact, sobra silang, sobra silang nainggit. Ano ginawa nila kay Joseph? Do you remember his early adversity? Binugbog siya. Diba? Binugbog siya ng mga kapatid niya. Tinapon siya sa well. In fact, gusto na siyang patayin. Pero sabi na lang ng isang kuya niya, huwag na nating patayin. Tapon muna natin sa well, tapos pag-usapan natin anong gagawin natin dyan. So tinapon nila sa well. Yung iba gusto pa rin siyang patayin, pero yung isang kapatid naman niya sabi, huwag na lang, pagkakitaan na lang natin. Benta natin si Joseph. That was one of the first few adversities that Joseph encountered. Madami pa siyang na-encounter in his life. But this story, at this point in time, you can open your Bibles, at that point in time, ito yung point na nabenta na si Joseph. At napunta siya sa isang medyo mayaman. The name is Potiphar. Right? Si Potiphar yung nakabili sa kanya. Can I ask you, sister, to read the verse?
Genesis 39:3-6. Potiphar saw that the Lord was with Joseph, and that the Lord made Joseph successful in everything he did. So Potiphar was very happy with Joseph and allowed him to be his personal servant. He put Joseph in charge of the house, trusting him with everything he owned. When Joseph was put in charge of the house and everything Potiphar owned, the Lord blessed the people in Potiphar's house because of Joseph. And the Lord blessed everything that belonged to Potiphar, both in the house and in the field. So Potiphar left Joseph in charge of everything he owned and was not concerned about anything except the food he ate.
Thank you. So that's part of the story of Joseph where nabili na siya ni Potiphar. So, sino siya? Kung binili siya ni Potiphar, ano siya kay Potiphar? Slave. Slave siya. No? Slave siya ni Potiphar. But look what happened here. Look what happened. There are many things we can learn from this story. What are some of the things we can learn from this story? One, Joseph the Dreamer. Yun yung play. Yun yung play before Joseph the Dreamer. Several things about this. One, Potiphar took a liking at Joseph. Ibig sabihin, nagustuhan niya si Joseph. Kasi magaling magtrabaho. Magaling magtrabaho si Joseph. So nagustuhan siya ni Potiphar. Took a liking at Joseph. At dahil nagustuhan siya, he made him overseer. So, parang hotel manager. O ikaw na ang tagapamahala ng lahat ng ari-arian ko, ng bahay ko at lahat ng laman yan. So, Potiphar put Joseph in charge of the house and everything he owned. Okay, so ikaw nang in charge. I will entrust everything to you. Now, while all of this happening, I'd like to ask a question. Who owns the house? Potiphar pa rin. Hindi binigay ni Potiphar kay Joseph. Sinabi niya lang, you manage it. I will make you overseer of it. I will make you a steward of it. And when Joseph was the steward of the house, the Lord blessed Joseph, and Joseph was blessed in the sense that everything he did was successful. Now imagine, yung background ni Joseph, binugbog siya, ginawa siyang slave, di ba he has all the reason to complain? In fact, kung titignan niyo pa yung buong story ni Joseph, makukulong pa siya, mapapagbintangan pa siya. Dito sa bahay ni Potiphar, mapapagbintangan pa yan eh. So mahabang-mahaba yung story niyan. But, Joseph went through all of these things and yet hindi siya mareklamo. Hindi siya nagreklamo. In fact, he kept on doing his best in wherever he was placed. And whatever was put under his care, he keeps on doing his best. How many of us, brothers and sisters, keep on complaining? Ay, ang init. Ay, ang pangit ang trabaho ko. Ay, nakakaasar yung boss ko. You know that, are those familiar, whether you say it or not, whether it's in your mind, it does happen, di ba? We complain and we complain. And yet here is one person who has all the reason to complain and he does not complain. He does the other thing. Amidst his circumstances, he keeps on doing his job really well. So Joseph is a model of stewardship because regardless of anything that is happening to him, the good and the bad, he utilizes the resources that are available to him. Now, those are some lessons we can learn from the story. And like Joseph, tayo rin, brothers and sisters, we're also called to be stewards. We're also called to be stewards. Now, let me put some parallelism. We said Potiphar took a liking at Joseph and made him overseer. Now, if we put that in the perspective of our relationship with the Lord, our relationship with God, God not only likes us, but He loves us so immensely. God loves us so perfectly. Hindi lang like. Di ba sa Facebook, like. Ito hindi, love. Love kita, sabi ng Panginoon. And you know the story naman, di ba? And it's not just a story, it's fact. He loves us so much that He gave His only Son so that we can experience life in all its fullness. Di ba? Now, Potiphar put Joseph in charge of the house and everything he owned. It's the same case with our Lord. The Lord put us in charge of everything that we have. You're in charge of your finances, of your relationships, of your work. The Lord put you in charge. And what are those resources? Oh, putol na naman. Time, talent, and treasure. Our time, our talent, lahat ng skills natin, our treasure, God has put us in charge of those. And the perspective, we said that, di ba hindi naman si Joseph ang may-ari ng house? It was Potiphar. It's not the hotel manager that owns the hotel. It's the hotel owner. Such is our life. Do you know the song, We Belong to God? Kinakanta niyo ba yon? There's a song, in both life and death, we belong to God. So our very lives belongs to the Lord. Everything that we have belongs to the Lord. So our time, our talent, and our treasure also belongs to the Lord. And we are stewards. And like Joseph, who was blessed and did very well in everything that was bestowed upon him, ganon din tayo. We're called to be good stewards. This is your lot, sabi ng Panginoon. Ito yung buhay na ibibigay ko sa'yo. Now, what are you gonna do about it? And the Lord asks you to become a good steward of your life, of your time, of your talent, your money, your treasure, your talent, I mean your skills, your capabilities. Magaling kang kumanta. Sabi ng Panginoon, sa'yo yan. Ano ngayon ang gagawin mo dyan? Magaling kang mag-drawing. You paint. That's your gift. The Lord gave you that. I wonder what your gifts are. If I had time, I would have asked you, what do you think your gifts are? The Lord gave that to you. You're asked to be a steward of that. Now, what are you gonna do about it? Your treasure belongs to the Lord. And regardless of our circumstance, regardless of the good and the bad that is happening to us, we're called to be good stewards. We're called to do the best we can with our time, our treasure, and our talent. I came from a leadership program called Haggai Training, which is held in Maui. It's given to Christian leaders. And the one who is in charge of that entire institution is Dr. John Edmund Haggai. And Dr. Haggai defined Christian stewardship in one of his talks. And he defined it as this. Can you read it with me together? Christian stewardship is the practice of systematic and proportionate giving time. Everything that we have is a trust from God. And stewardship is the practice of, I highlighted this, systematic and proportionate giving of time. Systematic and proportionate means purposeful, planado yung paggamit mo ng iyong resources. Your time, your talent, your treasure. Planado. You're really doing something about it so that it will be used to glorify the Lord. Systematic and proportionate. It's a long story why I retired. It's a long story also how I retired. And I think I've told that story to some of you in some of the previous talks I gave. But let me just share one of the things I did upon retirement. One of the reasons why I retired, by the way, is so that I can serve the Lord with all that I have and be a good father and son a good father to my children and a good husband to my wife. So a good family man. And because of this, I wanted to make sure that I had enough time for the mission and I have enough time for my family. I have enough time for the mission. Ang dami kong mission, brothers and sisters. I give talks left and right. I'm the leader right now of an institution. It's called I'm the president of Institute for Pastoral Development. So it kind of takes a lot of my time. And yet, my family has so much time with me. I have regular dates with my wife, for example. I have one-on-ones with each of my children. They're still young, 9 and 6. And yet, I already have one-on-ones with each of them. And they enjoy it. Pagka medyo mahaba-haba yung panahon na hindi kami nakapag one-on-one, sabihin na ako, Papa, one-on-one naman tayo. They enjoy it. And at this early age, we're having good conversations with each other. I have enough time. I'm also a pastoral leader in Ligaya. I have enough time to spend with each of the people I care for. And I have enough time to spend doing evangelism work. So, People ask, how are you able to do all of these things? Well, I just make sure that I give each the appropriate time. It's a systematic and proportionate way of giving my time and my talent. And even my treasure. You know, my tithes, for example, systematic yan kung we will talk about tithing later, but part of my tithe go to church, part go to lingkod ng Panginoon, part go to ligaya ng Panginoon, part go to the Institute for Pastoral Development. So even at that, and then I have allocated enough for the education of my children, I have allocated, etc., etc. It's another long story. But the only point I want to make is a systematic and proportionate way of taking care or being in charge of the things that God has put under our care. Clear ba yung stewardship? Klaro naman. Now, let's dig further because there are 4 principles with financial stewardship. Can we read that? The 4 principles. 1. Second. Third. And the fourth is part of our call as disciples. And I underlined here some keywords so you will remember. Belongs, provides, enjoy, and giving. Belongs, provides, enjoy, and giving. Let's tackle them one by one. The first principle, everything belongs to God. I already mentioned this, but let's dig it further. Everything belongs to God. It's also called the divine ownership. Brother, can you read Psalm 24, that part?
The earth belongs to the Lord, and everything in it, in all its fullness, the world and all those who dwell in it.
Thank you. Everything belongs to God. The earth belongs to God. God created everything, and therefore everything belongs to Him. And that includes the things that we usually call our own, like our cell phone belongs to God. Our cars belong to God. Our clothes belong to God. Are you seeing the concept now? And it's important to know that because your perspective will change once you realize that we are stewards of what we have. And everything we have is God's gracious gift to us. Can you turn to the person in your right and can you tell that person, lahat ng ari-arian mo, kay God yan. Now, can I ask you to bring out your wallets kahit walang laman? Can you just bring out your wallets or kahit yung mga nandito na lang? Bring out your wallets. Okay, now, look at the person now to your left and tell that person, yung laman ng wallet mo, pati ATM mo, kay God yan, sabihin mo. Right. I just want it to sink in, brothers and sisters. I want it to sink in. Even the things that we usually call our own, that belongs to the Lord because the earth, and read that again, the earth and everything that's in it, in all its fullness, belongs to the Lord. Thus, therefore, we are merely stewards of everything that we have. Look at the person at your back naman and tell that person, sabihin mo sa kanya, yung laman ng wallet mo, tagabantay ka lang. Are we getting the principle? Are we getting the principle? Everything belongs to God. And you know, if you start to accept this, there's going to be a new perspective in how you spend your money. Will you just spend it and waste it away? Or will you spend it to be able to glorify the Lord? Or will you spend it to be able to love your brothers and sisters? It's a totally different perspective once you accept that everything belongs to the Lord. The second perspective, principle number 2, God provides for His disciples. God provides for His disciples. You know, brothers and sisters, we are a children of a Father who provides for our needs. That verse there, Luke 12:27 to 31, that's the verse that says, "Consider the lilies, they neither toil nor spin, yet not even Solomon was arrayed like these." And then, it continues, if that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire. Yung damo, di ba, isang araw tutubo yun, pangalawang araw, wala na siya. O kaya tatagal lang maiksi lang yung life ng grass eh. That's why it keeps on growing and growing. On the other hand, if it grows too long, it gets thrashed right away, di ba? Kung yung grass of the fields mahal ng Panginoon at inaalagaan ng Panginoon, paano pa tayo, who is His favorite creation? Tell the person beside you, bahala kung sa kaliwa o sa kanan. Favorite ka ng Panginoon. Paano ka pa, brothers and sisters? Favorite ka pa ng Panginoon. And then it continues. And do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Do not worry about it. All the people in the world are trying to get these things, and your Father knows you need them. But seek God's kingdom, and all the other things you need will be given to you. Seek first the kingdom of God, and everything else will be given to you. The question here is, do you trust the Lord? Do you trust God? The God who is saying that I am going to take care of you. Do you trust God? Now, how does the Lord provide? Okay. The Lord normally, and I highlighted this, through our labors, provides enough for our needs, our basic necessities, and even a surplus for good works. You know, brothers and sisters, ayaw rin naman ng Panginoon na maging one tamad tayo. Alam niyo yung story ni one tamad, di ba? Kaya siya one tamad kasi hinihintay niya lang bumagsak yung apple. Kukunin niya na lang, hindi niya pa gawin. The Lord did not raise us, did not create beautiful things like us. He did not give us the talents that we have para magpakatamad tayo. So how does He provide? Through our labor. In fact, if you read 2 Thessalonians 3 verse 10, it says there, anyone who refuses to work should not eat. Sabi ni Paul kay Timothy, ayaw mong magtrabaho, huwag kang kumain. So how does the Lord provide for you? Through our work, through our labor. And that's how we get blessed. If we do nothing, then nothing will happen to us. But if we use our gifts, then things start happening. Things start progressing in our lives. In fact, yung 1 Timothy dyan, 5 verse 8, ang nakasabi dyan, basahin ko na lang, whoever does not care for his own relatives, especially his own family members, has turned against the faith and is worse than someone who does not believe in God. Kung meron pa sa inyo nagtatanong, kailangan ko bang tumulong sa kapatid kong naghihirap? Kailangan ko bang tulungan yung parents ko na may sakit? Huwag nyo nang tanungin. Ang sagot doon, oo. Kailangan nyong tumulong. Kailangan. It's something that the Lord asks us to do. And therefore, if we think of that, why do we need to work? We need to work because we need to be able to provide for our needs, so we will be blessed, but we also need to provide for the people around us. Not that they will become mendicant, not that they will become yung umaasa na lang sa atin. Of course, we do not like that. We want to equip people to be able to stand up on their own. But that doesn't mean that we will not help. We have to help. We're called to love. So going back to my point, where I was saying that the Lord did not raise us as one-tamads. Connecting these two things now, the first point says that the Lord will provide for our needs. And I said that the question to ask there is, do you trust God? The second point here says, He doesn't want us to be one-tamads. He will provide for us through our work. So if you connect the two, the question then to ask, if you trust God, and if you are doing something about your situation, then you don't need to worry. Sapat na ba yung trust kay God? Tapos wala kang ginagawa? Mag-worry ka. Because the Lord didn't, if you take a look at all His miracles in creation history, if you study all His miracles, He always worked with a raw material. Hindi yung magic na, ting, ganyan. Yung okay ka na. Your life is okay. He always worked with raw material. And that raw material is provided by us. That's our labor. That's our work. Now, 2 Corinthians 9 verse 8. Ang sinasabi ng 2 Corinthians 9 verse 8, and God can give you more than you need. If you are doing your part, if you are trusting in God, then you will have more than what you need. Alam nyo, brothers and sisters, totoo yan eh. If I talk to a lot of people and they say they don't have enough for themselves. I was in the board of trustees of Lingkod, and there was feedback that came up that ang dami sa mga brothers and sisters, ang problema is their finances. Kahig tuka. Kung ano yung nakukuha, lumalabas ka agad. Nagbabayad ng utang, babad sa utang, ganyan. That's the problem of many. But then, if I did some one-on-ones with some, and I'm not going to tell you who there is. I'm not even going to tell you which branch they come from. I'm not going to tell you that one of them comes from Lingkod, Manila. No, I'm just kidding. But I've had discussions with some of them. And sige, on the onset, when the story was being told na kahig tuka, oo nga, hirap ng buhay. And then when I dug further, I found out that this person loves Starbucks coffee. I used this example before already, for some of you who have heard it. But loves Starbucks coffee, and every day he would drink a cup of Starbucks coffee. And how much is a cup of Starbucks coffee? Yung pinakamura, 115 na yata. I mean, 95 na ba? Tea. Kasi ang alam ko, parang 115. But roughly, it's around the 100 peso level. And if you drink one every day, actually yung brother na yun, hindi pa nga once a day, mga twice a day pa. But if you drink once a day, compute that, times 30. 3,000 kaagad yun, di ba? Kung dalawa a day, edi 6,000 kaagad yun, di ba? You know, when that person realized it, sabi niya, oh my, pwede na akong makaalis sa utang ko kung yung tumigil lang siyang mag-Starbucks at magbayad-bayad siya. Now, it's not just Starbucks. I know of another person naman, ang luho niya, CD. Nung time na yun, uso pa yung CD. Ngayon, di ba, nagda-download na lang, bumibili sa iTunes. Pero yung person na yun, CD, bumibili ng CD, nangungulekta. Nung time na yon, ang CD was around 375 pesos. And ang dami-dami niyang CD, pero baon siya sa utang. You see my story, brothers and sisters. We begin to realize that if we take a look at our lives, how we spend, aba, kaya pala nating mabuhay. If we think on living simply, suddenly we realize that we have even a surplus to be able to help other people. It was Saint Elizabeth Seton who said, "Live simply so that others may simply live." Live simply so that others may simply live. Therefore, we should not worry about money. God takes care of us. And thus, the disciples of the Lord need not worry or be anxious about daily provisions and sustenance. Now, let me give you a highlight and a warning. What's the highlight and the warning? Can we read this together? The love of money, root of all evil. Some people, I want to ask you a question. Is money evil? Is money bad? Good. You know. Money is not bad. Money is not evil. In fact, money is a blessing from the Lord. And the reason why you could stay in this place to have this retreat is because money has to be used to pay for the place. Money has to be used to buy this projector. You know, money is being used when you have your, do you already have action groups? Okay, so nagmi-meet na kayo as action groups, you need money to go to the action group. Diba? You need money to feed each other, whether it's potluck or if someone hosts it. Money is needed to bless us and bless others. But the love of money is evil. Sabi nga, di ba, do not love God and mammon. Do not love God and money. It is an alternate God. Some of the people, they love money so much, they want to have so much of it. And then they destroy their principles. I was, about 3 Christmases ago, I was already retired by then. And I was having a discussion, having dinner actually, with a very rich man. A man who had a yacht, a man who had several big houses, a man who owned several condos. And then he said, "Randy, magre-retire ka na?" And this man was much older than I am. He was probably around 15 years older than me. Sabi niya, "Bata-bata mo pa, magre-retire ka na? Paano mo ginagawa yan?" Tapos sabi ko sa kanya, "Alam mo, kaya mo rin mag-retire eh." Sabi ko sa kanya. Sabi niya, hindi ko kaya. Madami pa akong kailangan bayaran, madami pa akong kailangan, gawin sa buhay, madami pa akong mga ambisyon na kailangan gawin. It's the love of money. The love of money was consuming that person. Kala niya mayaman siya. Mayaman lang siya sa pera, pero yung heart niya, punong-puno siya ng stress, punong-puno siya ng... And he's not able to bless other people. Meanwhile, I was living a much simpler way than what compared to that person, and yet I was able to bless so many people. And I'm able to retire because I decided to live according to what my wife and I talked about. Maaga pa lang nag-usap na kami na simple lang tayo Hindi natin kailangan ng napakadaming bahay. Gusto natin, ang mga importante sa amin, we have enough medical benefits of our own, that we can fund our health, that we can give our children good schools. And when we started to define, and I started to define how much I needed to fund all of those, nung na-attain ko na yon, sabi ko, tama na. It's time to give my all to the Lord. That's enough for me. I could still I could still command a high price if I go to the industry. When I retired from the corporate world, my position was very, very high. And until now, I can command the good rate if I go back to the corporate world. But yet, I decide not to. Hindi naman ako nandito sa mundong to para magpakayaman ng magpakayaman di ba? I am here to do God's will. And that's what I'm here to do. The third principle, it's God who enables us to acquire and enjoy every material well-being. Part of the reason why the Lord gives us what we have is also so that we can enjoy. I have given you life, life in all its fullness. Look at the person to your right again. And then, sabihin mo sa katabi mo, dami mo namang problema. Tapos sabihin mo ulit sa kanya, mag-enjoy ka naman. Proverbs 10 verse 22 says, when God gives any man wealth and possessions and enables him to enjoy them, to accept his lot and be happy in his work, this is a gift of God. How many of you have gone to a vacation? Raise your hand. Any vacation. Sarap magbakasyon, no? Tell the person to your left, that was a gift from God. You know, brothers and sisters, one of the reasons that we are blessed is so that we can enjoy the beauty of God's creation, so that we can enjoy life in all its fullness. We're called to be happy people, peaceful people. And the thing is, when we do receive those kinds of blessings, let's acknowledge that that is a gift from God. How many of you, and now don't raise your hands, just think about it. How many of you, during your last vacation, said, maraming salamat po, Panginoon? Sometimes we have fun, but we forget to realize that it was a gift from the Lord. Without God's blessings, we would not have good things we enjoy now. Our health, our minds, our education, our families, our jobs, our business opportunities, our good fortunes are all by God's grace. Lahat ng blessings natin, panigurado, galing sa Panginoon yan. Galing sa Panginoon yan. However, it doesn't end there. When the Lord blesses us, it's not enough for us to enjoy it. We also ought to share our possessions, to use these things not just for our benefit, but we ought to use them to glorify the Lord. My last job was in a pharmaceutical company. I was a regional director, Asia Pacific region, and I managed about 14 countries. And my position then was even higher than the general manager of the Philippines, because my role was a regional role. It was a high position. One of the benefits of that was a good car. And that time, they were giving me a Volvo. It was a Volvo station wagon. And when I was being given a Volvo, alam niyo pumasok sa akin, brothers and sisters, sabi ko, sa sarili ko, ayoko yata. Kunyari pa, no? Pero sabi ko, ayoko yata. And tanungin niyo why? Kasi natatakot ako na baka masanay ako. Baka masanay ako sa... That was also the reason why I did not accept an expatriate role. I was being given an expatriate role in Singapore. Hindi ko rin tinanggap. Kasi sabi ko, baka masanay ako masyado. I really had plans to retire early to be able to serve the Lord. Kung masanay ako sa luho, baka magustuhan ko yung luho. Anyway, but it was being given to me with no extra, what they call this, no extra commitments from my part. It was just a blessing. That was part of my benefits. So, I turned to the Lord and I said, sige na nga Lord, tanggapin ko na nga. Kunyari pa. But, sabi ko, but Lord, please show me how I can glorify you with this. And you know, brothers and sisters, what happened? That Volvo station wagon, I did have it. My family loved it. My children loved it. Sabi nila, Volvo daw is the safest car. So my family loved it. And it was used for service. It was a station wagon. So it could fit about 2 or 3 guitars, 2 amps. It could fit music books, ganyan. So ginagawa kong kargahan ng mga community activities. Okay lang sa akin yan. Okay ka lang ba, Brother Randy? Baka magasgas yung... Hindi, okay lang yan. Volvo pa naman yung coach. Hindi, okay lang yan. Kargahan mo pang service yan. You know the other thing that it was used for? Several lingkod members who got married, that was their bridal car. So I saved them a cost already. Kasi nagpaplano sila, bridal car. Tapos, mahal din yung bridal car di ba? So, sabi nila, Brother Rans, pwede pa sabi ko, sige, sa akin pati gasolina, sa akin na. Yan. So, nakaka-serve pa siya. But what is the point? What am I trying to illustrate? Whatever gifts we receive, it's meant for us to enjoy, but it does not end there. Let's think about, how am I gonna use this to glorify the Lord? The fourth principle is giving. Giving is part of our call as disciples. My example there is Mother Teresa. And Christians have the responsibility for financial giving, and we're going to dig deeper into this, for sharing the resources with one another, so that no one will be in need. I have so many stories about this, but let me reserve that for later. This is part of the stewardship the Lord requires of His disciples over His resources. Pwede ba, dito sa Lingkod Manila, dapat walang nangangailangan. Bakit? Kasi may brothers and sisters Kailangan tayo-tayo magtutulungan. Di ba? That's part of it. That's part of being community. It doesn't mean na mag-uutungan tayo sa isa't isa dahil magiging cause naman ng difficulties, ng broken relationships. But we have to help one another. And financial giving indicates the condition of our hearts and the extent of our conversion to the Lord. You know the story of the widow's mite? It was a gospel not so far back. Sabi ni Jesus, nagbigay, di ba, yung may mayaman, nagbigay, malaki, and then may widow, 2 copper coins. Nagkling-kling pa. And sabi ni Jesus, who gave more? It was the widow, because she gave all she had. Why do you think could the widow give all she had? Why? Because she trusts the Lord. There's no other reason. She knows that tomorrow God will provide for her again. Kaya kayang-kaya niya ibigay lahat 'yon. So it shows the condition of our hearts, the way we give. Kung kuripot magbigay, alam mong yung puso nung kuripot din, di ba? And you might mistake me. There's a reason for spending appropriately. For example, like kami sa pamilya namin, kuripot talaga kami sa ibang bagay. Pero pagdating sa tithing, sa education, my children, they both study in LaSalle. Not cheap, because I want the best education for them. Health, Kung anong kailangan gawin sa health, do it. We have regular check-ups, dental, ganyan. Hindi namin pinapagtipiran yan. Giving, kung may nangangailangan, may community member who is in need, we will gladly help. No questions asked. Now, for other things, medyo kuripot kami when we, try to spend for not so important things. I have clothes with me that have been with me for a long, long time. I've made several decisions, even in some of the things. Like for example, there was when I was single, I was not yet as committed as I am right now. Oh my, you should see my shirts. Ang mamahal, Lacoste, Ralph, you should see my, whatever, my watches, my ganyan. Then when I started having a family and then started making these kinds of decisions, yung pabango ko na dating Lacoste, o kaya basta yung, very expensive cologne. Ngayon, awin niyo ako, ano na lang yan? Bench na lang yan, bench. Yung 180 pesos yata. Pero mabango. Tsaka pinapapili ko yung wife ko. Basta piliin mo yung magugustuhan mo. Yun lang naman importante sa akin eh. Yung gusto mo yung amoy ko. Di ba? Financial giving indicates your gratitude to God, generosity and concern for others, trust in God. The magnitude of the way you give, the magnitude is directly proportionate to your gratitude to the Lord, to your generosity and concern for others, to your trust in God. If until now, for those of you who have been in lingkod for a long time, and until now, hindi pa rin kayo nagbibigay ng contributions sa lingkod, parang pwede ko kayong tanungin, may tiwala ba kayo sa Panginoon? Bakit hindi kayo makapagbigay? For those of you who until now, barya-barya pa rin yung linalagay sa church, I can ask the question, may tiwala ba kayo sa Panginoon? Bakit ganun lang yung paglalagay? And it's not the amount. It's more important, I guess, is its percentage to what you're earning. Diba? And we'll talk about that. Remember, the ultimate purpose of wealth is to love. The ultimate purpose of wealth is to love. You'll read this in some of Bo's books. I'm supposed to show you a video, but I'm gonna skip this because it'll take too long. Let me just continue. So do you recall the principles of stewardship? What are the four? What are the four keywords na lang? Belongs, provides, enjoys, giving. Let's continue talking about financial giving. Let's continue talking about financial giving. Since the time of Abraham, God's people have expressed their stewardship over their possessions in three basic ways. So yung mga ikikwento ko sa inyo ngayon, hindi to inimbento ni Randy. Now, these are things that have been practiced since the time of Abraham. What are they? Tithing, resource sharing, and almsgiving. Those are the three ways to give. Three best ways to give. What are they? Okay, tithing. Can we read together? Tithing is the practice whereby 1/10 of one's income or goods is given to the support and extension of the Christian cause. The practice has been supported by Jewish law. Deuteronomy 14 says, "Be sure to save 1/10 of all your crops each year. Take it to the place the Lord your God will choose where He is to be worshipped." So if you take a look at this verse, who is speaking here? Do you know who's speaking there? It's actually the Lord who's speaking there. And then if you look at the next one pa, Leviticus 27:30. Okay. 1/10 of all crops belong to the Lord, including the crops from fields and the fruit from trees. That 1/10 is holy to the Lord. The tithe is considered holy. The tithe is considered holy. If you look at history, the way that tithing was being practiced, in the Old Testament, the way they practiced it was that a tenth. So the first, sabi nila, the first fruit of your labor. If this is your harvest, the first tenth goes to the Lord. So the tenth goes to the Lord. Now, a lot of people take a look at the tenth. Tinitignan nila yung sweldo nila. Sabi nila, sweldo ko 10,000 pesos per month. Yung 1/10 nun, 1,000 pesos. Ang laki-laki naman ng 1,000 pesos. Ibibigay ko yung 1,000 sa Panginoon. Bibigay ko sa simbahan, sa lingkod, sa wherever. Parang hindi ko yata kaya yon. A lot of people focus on the 10th, on the 1,000. They forget about the 9,000. They forget that first and foremost, this entire thing is yours because it was given by the Lord. And therefore, the tithe is showing your trust in the Lord. Actually, hinihingi lang ng Panginoon yan para matignan kung talagang may tiwala kayo sa Kanya. Because kung may tiwala kayo sa Kanya, then you begin to realize that this entire 10,000 comes from the Lord, and I just give this 1,000 because I trust that the Lord will continue on providing for my needs. And if you don't give that 1,000 to the Lord, what is it showing? It's showing a lack of trust. Now, sabi siguro ng iba, lit naman ang example mo, Randy, 10,000. Mas malaki sweldo ko dyan. 50,000 ang sweldo ko every month. Tapos pagkino, Randy, 50,000. Yung 1/10 nun, 5,000 na, masyado nang malaki yun. Again, you forget to see the 45. We forget to see the 90%. You see what I mean? Okay, but anyway, the way it is practiced, 1/10, in the Old Testament, a tenth was given to the Lord. In the New Testament, Jesus himself encourages disciples to continue with the practice of tithing. In fact, he started a revolution here. And he said, it should not end with a tenth. Because what was the story of the widow's mite? What I just, mentioned a while ago. The widow really trusted that the Lord will provide because she was able to give all that she had. In the early Christian communities, and this is the Acts of the Apostles already, in the early Christian communities, the way they practiced was more than tenth. They would share. So they would live together. Kung may nangangailangan, they would sell their property and help the person. So it was communal. So it was more than a tenth. And then they would sell. If you read those passages, you're gonna encounter things like they sold their property and gave the proceeds to the apostles so that they can continue their mission work. Di ba sila Saint Paul, sila Timothy, sila Barnabas, they moved around, hindi ba? And as they moved around, guess what? They need money. Where do they get their money? Well, they were working. St. Paul was a tent builder. He was building tents and he was selling them. But at the same time, they were also supported by the early Christian communities. So they gave more than just a tenth. Now, traditional church teaching says that, until now, the teaching is that 10% of one's income goes to the work of the Lord. And in Lingkod, the same is practiced. The teaching of Lingkod is that 10% should go to the work of the Lord. It doesn't necessarily mean it goes to Lingkod. It goes to the work of the Lord. Let me give you an example. Part of it should actually go to your parish. I have a question for you, brothers and sisters. When you go to mass, and you can raise your hands, how many of you, even before you go to mass, know exactly how much you're going to put in the offertory basket? Can you raise your hands? Madami. Very good. Alam nyo eksakto kung ano yung ibibigay. A lot of people kasi, bahala na kung ano yung madukot. Di ba? And in fact, ilan sa inyo naka-encounter na ng ganito? Huwag na kayo magtaas ng kamay. Pagdating ng offertory basket, dukot kayo. Pagtingin nyo, 500 pesos. Masabing, medyo hirap na hirap kayo. Tapos, Lord, walang panukli. Next week, doblehin ko yung bibigay ko. Alam nyo yun? You know, brothers and sisters, I was sharing about systematic and proportionate giving. I know exactly how much I give to church. Because it is a certain percentage of my total tithe. Because part of my tithe goes to Ligaya. Part of my tithe goes to Lingkod. Part of my tithe goes to IPD. And part of my tithe goes to the church. And I know that part that goes to the church. Kaya eksaktong, pag pumupunta ako sa simbahan, alam ko na kagad magkano yung dapat kong ilagay. Kasi planado part ng budget ko yun yung tithe ko. You know what I mean by systematic and proportionate giving? So that's what I mentioned. It doesn't mean that everything goes to lingkod. Hindi naman kayo tatanungin ng action group leader nyo, magkano sweldo mo? Based sa records namin, 0.001% lang yung binibigay mo. Hindi naman ginagawa ng lingkod yun It's really between you and the Lord. But you want to make sure that you give to the work of the Lord. Another example, maybe some of you are supporting somebody to become a priest. That's part of it. As long as 10% goes to the work of the Lord. Right? So that's tithing. And then there's resource sharing. Ano naman yung resource sharing? Deuteronomy 15 verse 7 to 8 says, if one of your kinsmen in any community is in need, you shall not harden your heart, nor close your hand to him in his need. Instead, you shall open your hand to him and freely lend him enough to meet his need. So, resource sharing really is about lending our material resources to care for the specific needs of our brothers and sisters. This is another way to express financial giving. Tulong-tulungan. Pag pumupunta sa action group, meeting, may kotse ka, alam mo yung isang kasama mo, walang kotse, kahit out of the way, daanan na kita bro, daanan na kita sis, para mas mapapadali sa inyo. May oras ka, alam mo yung isang sister mag-prepare para sa isang Lord's Day celebration, siya yung magluluto, siya yung na-assign, may oras ka naman, sister, marunong din ako magluto, tulungan kita dyan. You know what, it's resource sharing. No one should be in need. There's this story, and it's a true story. It's a sad story, unfortunately, but it happened in a prayer meeting. And di ba, when we worship, sometimes part of our time of worship is to do supplication. Di ba? We ask the Lord verbally and loudly. And what happened during that prayer meeting was that during their time of worship, there was this person who was saying, Lord, hirap na ako. Bigyan mo naman ako ng trabaho. Sabi niya. And then the community said, yes, Lord, bigyan nyo na siya ng trabaho. 3 months later, there was another prayer meeting, and the same sister said the same supplication. Sabi niya, Lord, I'm really having a difficult time. Tulungan mo naman ako, bigyan mo naman ako ng trabaho. And then the community was saying, yes, Lord, bigyan nyo na siya ng trabaho, Lord. Yes, Lord, please help her. Another 3 months pass, ganun na naman nangyari. Now, here's the sad part about it. The sad part is, people were saying, yes, Lord, but in that community, there were several HR managers who were in that community. There were several managers in that community. There were people in that community that were well connected who could have helped that person find a job. But in all those 6 months, no one even approached that person and said, talaga bang nangangailangan ka? Tulungan kita. Meron akong kilala dito, gusto mo mag-apply dito. Patingin naman ang resume mo. Baka pwede nating pagandahin. See what I'm trying to relay? It's not just saying, yes, Lord. Kaya nga, the blessing comes through our labor. That person trusted in the Lord, but hindi na bless ng community because no one acted upon it. Kawawa naman yung tao. If someone would have acted, then there was trust, and there was the action, and there was the blessing. That person would have been blessed. Okay, the third way is alms giving. So tithing, resource sharing, alms giving. Alms giving naman is giving to the poor. I think this is self-explanatory. So I won't. Nawala na ako ng. It's self-explanatory naman, so I won't dwell too much on it anymore. But basically, alms giving. I think the perfect example here is Mother Teresa. Bakit ganun siya? Okay. But it's giving to the last, the lost, the last, and the least. So, financial giving, there's three things. Tithing is the 10%. Oh, by the way, madami sa lingkod ng tatanong sa akin. Yung 10% ba yan, Randy? Kasi ano ako naging national treasurer ako ng lingkod. Kaya ako natatanong. Yung 10% ba na yon gross? Sabi ko, tanungin mo na lang si God, ano yung sasagot sa'yo? But for that, really, the real teaching is the first fruit of your labor. So it really refers to the gross. Pero, pag tinignan niyo yung Financial Stewardship Handbook, by the way, try to get a copy of the Financial Stewardship Handbook of Lingkod, Financial Handbook. Nakasulat na doon. It's your gross, less all your deductions, SSS, PhilHealth, less all your taxes, yun yung basis nyo na lang ng 10%. Alright, kasi madaming nagtatanong. But if you take a look at the strictest sense of the word, if you take a look at Scripture, it is coming from the first fruit of your labor. First fruit of your labor. So tithing, and then resource sharing and alms giving is beyond tithing. So hindi tama yung nagsabi na nakita mo yung tithe ng isang brother. 485 pesos. Tapos, parang butaw. Bakit kaya? Tinanong mo, bro, bakit kaya 485 pesos yung binigay mo? Usually 500 pesos Bakit 485? Kasi merong pulubi doon, binigyan ko ng 15 pesos. Minus na yun sa tithing ko. Resource sharing and alms giving is on top of tithing. Okay, here's the thing. Tithing is about obedience. Resource sharing and alms giving is about generosity. So what is that trying to tell you? That means, yung iba parang, ang laki-laki ng tithe nila. Pero pag tinignan mo, malaki kasing sweldo So, it's just 2% probably of what they're earning. Now, kahit malaki yung tithe nun, and then people think, wow, he's so generous. You know, that person is not generous. Kulang pa nga siya ng obedience Generosity starts after obedience. Doon pa lang nagsisimula yung generosity. Kasi yung tithing, it was a command from the Lord. So tithing is about obedience. Resource sharing and alms giving is about generosity. Last section, and then I'm gonna end. This is not gonna be long. Practical application na lang in lingkod ng Panginoon. First, are we familiar with the lingkod statement of belief? There is a whole document, no? The lingkod statement of belief. If you don't have it, try to ask your action group leader, try to ask your leaders to provide you a copy. But there is a lingkod statement of belief. Now, I got an excerpt of that, and can you read that together? It's long, but I think it's important that we all understand. This is part of our statement of belief. Let's read it together. We believe consistent naman siya sa lahat ng sinasabi ko so far. And this is our statement of belief. We believe that all things come from the Lord. We exercise responsible stewardship. What we now have, our lives, our gifts, we offer back to the Lord. And this is our response so that we can participate in Christ's mission and ministry. How many of you will attest that your lives changed when you joined Lingkod? Can you raise your hand? You know, brothers and sisters, that's the reason kung bakit ang laki na ng age gap ko sa inyo, and yet I continue on coming back to Lingkod. Because Lingkod was a place where my life was changed. Lingkod is very, very instrumental to my intimacy with the Lord, to my conviction to love the Lord. It's very, very influential. And formation came from Lingkod. And do we want it to end here? Do we want it to end with us? Hindi tapos yung trabaho pag nabago na tayo. Part of being a lingkod, a servant, is to be part of the mission, to be part of the ministry, to be able to go out and share our change to other people so that they too will have changed lives. And something that supports that is the financial structure of Lingkod. So let's try to understand this financial structure of Lingkod because this really supports the ministry and mission of Lingkod. There are Lingkod branches. Lingkod Manila is one branch. There are several branches around the Philippines and several already in other countries. Now, what goes in financially, what goes into the branches are the contributions of the members. So yung mga members, meron silang voluntary contributions. And what does the branch do with this? This is what the branch uses to conduct their CLPs, to do their evangelization programs, to do retreats, events, to do formation, to do community building. That's where it is used. No, the contributions of the members. Now, the other thing the branches do is they give a contribution also to the Lingkod office. So each of the Lingkod branches gives a contribution to the national office. Another thing that funds the national office are the donations by the partners in mission, by subsidies. It's also funded by individuals. So there are several people, like for example, merong mga specific people na hindi na sila part ng Lingkod and yet they continue to give to Lingkod. And then there is the fund development team. So yung lingkod office natin has a fund development team. Ito yung nagpauso ng car raffle. Naalala niyo ba yung car raffle? Yung mga, ano yun? An hour a mission. Naalala niyo yun? So, those kinds of things, mga pauso ng fund development team yon, to be able to fund the national office. And where does that fund go? That fund goes to the development of materials, kaya yung mga courses natin, magaganda yung materials, to the training and formation of leaders. For example, when I was in the office, I used to travel to other places to be able to form leaders. I went to the Regional Leaders Training Conference, the National Leaders Training Conference, and then I would train people. And I was a recipient of that too. Mission trips, kaya nagkakaroon ng mga bagong branches. Kasi merong mga mission trips. There are brothers and sisters who go out on mission to start forming another branch of lingkod. Evangelization and expansion. Kaya tayo merong lingkod Singapore, lingkod Dubai. Kaya tayo merong mga ganyan kasi nafa-fund yan nung ating mission funds. So, do you now see where all of the money go? And by the way, ang palaging rinirecommend is there's that, I think it's about 70-30 if I'm not mistaken. There continues to be that 70-30 rule whereby 30% of the funds lang dapat ang napupunta sa mga administrative things. Like yung mga sweldo-sweldo ng mga nasa national office natin. Kawawa nga sila eh. Kilala niyo ba yung mga yung mga nagtatrabaho sa national office? Naku, brothers and sisters, i-honor niyo sila ha. Below minimum wage yung mga kinikita ng mga yon, and yet they give everything. Kasi limited tayo doon. The 70% should go to the development of materials, to the NLTCs, the RLTCs, the missions. 70% goes to the mission. I will ask you again, how many of you, brothers and sisters, whose lives were changed by lingkod? Can you raise your hand? And how many of you think, brothers and sisters, that lingkod will change many more lives? Can you raise your hands? Now, the thing about that is this one. The thing that's gonna fund that are your personal contributions. Your personal contributions. Because the member contributions are the primary source of income. Kung titignan nyo ito, compared to this is peanuts, brothers and sisters. Lingkod will not survive with donations. Tsaka tama naman yung principle, di ba? Bago tayo manglimos sa ibang tao, dumukot muna tayo sa sarili nating mga bulsa. And therefore, it's up to the membership of lingkod to fund lingkod so that it can continue to move on with its mission. And this, it's so critical because it goes to the mission fund of lingkod. It is what lingkod uses to reach out to other people. There's many more things about lingkod's financial structure. I won't touch on them. I will just recommend that you get the financial handbook. Okay, get a hold of that lingkod financial handbook and then read it. There's many more things there. So I'd like to conclude. We talked about stewardship. We talked about the principles of stewardship. We talked about financial giving. And we talked about the practical application in lingkod. I want to conclude. And I cannot say this too many times because this is so important. Everything belongs to God. We are merely stewards. And I mentioned, diba, that maybe one last story. Our perspective really changes when we realize that everything belongs to God. How many of you are accountants? Can you raise your hand? Nako, may matatamaan ako. 1, 2, 3. All right. Do you know, brothers and sisters, this doesn't apply to all accountants. There is still the 10% where it does not apply. But 90%, there was a study made that 90% of accountants don't have their own financial statements, their own personal financial statements. And it's so funny. Why? Because Accountants, they're so good in managing the money of the company. 'Di ba? They would do net present value analysis, they would do financial statements, they would do all of these things. They're so good in managing someone else's money. But then when it comes, kasi iba accountable sila, yung bonus nila, based on that, mapapagalitan sila, kung hindi, makakasuhan sila, it's someone else's money. But when it comes to their own money, patay na, nagkanda utang-utang na, nagkakamali na ng mga financial decisions. But that's the perspective I want to bring in. Yung perspective ng accountant, nung iba yung pera na hinahawakan niya, talagang minamanage niyang mabuti. Hindi kasi sa kanya yun di ba? Pero pagdating sa sarili niya, biglang, uy, maganda yung may sale ngayon. Halika, punta tayo sa sale. Nakalimutan na yung financial planning, nakalimutan na yung budgeting. Wow! Ang ganda-ganda ng bagong iPhone 5. Patingin nga ng, uy, pwede pang i-credit card, kaya pa. Magbabayad lang ako ng minimum. Pwede na. Nakakalimutan na yung principles. You see what I mean? Now, put that in perspective of your lives. Now, if your lives, if you start to understand that everything belongs to God, your perspective changes. You're accountable to the Lord for your money, for your talent, for your time. And therefore, regardless of our circumstance, whether we have plenty or whether we have little, whether we are having difficulty or whether we're okay, regardless of our circumstance, we're called to exercise good stewardship for the greater good and for God's glory. And our response, acknowledging that everything belongs to God and everything is a gift, then we live as if it belongs to God. Therefore, our life should show that we are being stewards of the things that are being given to us. And therefore, our response is gratitude. Thanks be to God. Our response is responsible stewardship. Our response is financial giving. And finally, our response is to love. Our response is to love. The amount we give, our generosity, the way we help the poor, the way we help our brothers and sisters, that shows the condition of our hearts. It shows our trust in the Lord. We are called to love God and love our brothers and sisters with all that we have. Thanks be to God. Thank you.